Welcome, everyone. I'm Sue Barber, author, former IT director for a Fortune 500 company, turned executive coach, and this is the Visibility Factor podcast, where we explore how to raise your visibility and play bigger at work and in life. We'll explore key topics and welcome guests that help you shift your thinking about yourself so you can see new possibilities for your leadership. I'm on a mission to create a visibility movement for leaders to show their value and be seen for their true talent. Are you ready to take the next step towards a higher level of visibility for yourself? Let's go. Today's episode of the Visibility Factor podcast is brought to you by Amplify You, the ultimate program designed to unleash your full potential and amplify your success. Imagine having a personal coach cheering you on, guiding you through a journey of self-discovery, and helping you break free from those limiting beliefs that have been holding you back. That's exactly what Amplify You is all about. Whether you're a leader now or aspiring to be one, this program is your ticket to a more confident, empowered you. It's like having a supportive friend in your corner, encouraging you to dream big. It's about having the career success that you want and creating a life you truly deserve. Amplify You offers a unique experience to help you build the confidence to tackle any challenge life throws your way. If you're interested in learning more about the program, please visit susanmbarber.com and click on the menu item Programs. Are you ready to transform your life and your career? Let's make it happen. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Visibility Factor podcast. This is Sue Barber, your host. I am so thrilled today to bring my guest to you, Lisa Gillette. She is a coach out in California, and I first found out about her by reading about her as one of the top 15 coaches in LA. And she happened to know someone who is a friend of mine. So that is how we got connected. And we've had the best conversations since we've talked. I've been on her podcast and now she's on mine. So I'm thrilled to bring her to you. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Susan. I so appreciate your work because you're really working in a space that is so important, visibility, and how to create it. Not only create visibility, but create trust and earn respect. So you can actually advance in your career and make a difference. So I so appreciate your work.
Yes, we have a lot of things that cross over between us. So I'd love to have you introduce yourself and what you do, and then we'll get into some conversation.
Oh, okay. Let me do the thumbnail. I spent 25 years in corporate, climbing the leadership ladder. And the last 10, I was an executive in sports television. And that was a highly intoxicating and very toxic work environment. And as I was moving into that final role as a senior vice president, I looked at the C-suite offices and I said, wow, no one there looks like me. All of them are either named John, Michael, or David. I think there might have been a couple of Richards in there, but none of the people in the C-suite were diverse or female. And so I knew I'd hit the glass ceiling. In fact, I hit it so hard, I had a sore neck. And I went to my HR partner and I said, we have to start a women's mentoring group because there are not enough senior women here. I was one of 4 women at the senior vice president level in a cast of over 250. So yes, it was sports television. Yes, it was a male-dominated work environment, but there are lots of women who are awesome athletes. And there are lots of women who grew up playing sports. And there are lots of women who are sports fans. And full disclosure, I was not a sports fan. I just know how to do on-air promo and get it on the air. And so I finally retired. And I hung out for about 2 years. My college roommate said to me, Lisa, you were always really active in promoting women into leadership roles. What are you doing, girlfriend? And I was like, oh, I did say I was going to do something with that, didn't I? And I got a coaching certificate and I realized all of those years I had been mentoring. I'd been telling people, and especially women, how to advance in their career. And that is not coaching. Coaching is asking questions to bring your clients to a place where they get a wider perspective and they can find the answers within themselves. So coaching is about encouraging and supporting and asking those questions that make people go, oh, let me rethink this. So I started my business, BIGSKY Coaching and Consulting, because I do believe when you see the big picture, you find the opportunities. And I work primarily with women who want to step into leadership roles or who already are leaders. And I help them navigate corporate culture and deal with some of the special challenges that all women, particularly women in leadership roles, face as they ascend up the leadership ladder.
Impressive career. I'm a huge sports fan, so for me, that would have been like amazing. I can't even imagine. Okay, I want to dive into a couple things, but I wanted to share, which you may not get to see, but I think it was the day before yesterday, they actually, for the first time, had 3 women broadcasters doing the Cubs game, which I thought was so amazing. And I loved how they each shared their stories and how they had kind of come up through sports and what they loved about it, and just how they really were excited to get into broadcasting, and how they even started when they were really young. So they even knew, at least 2 out of the 3 knew that that's what they wanted to do, which I think is so amazing. So yes, we need more in that space for sure.
Yeah, it's such a great point. I just want to add to anybody listening, if you have a vision and you have a dream and you're told, oh, well, you can't do that, or women don't do that, or if you're diverse, you can't do that, whatever, when they tell you can't do that, just lean back and know that you deserve no less than anyone else. And yes, you're actually going to do that.
Go make it happen. You can be the one to make it happen. I love that. Okay, so I'd love to just step back into your corporate career for a few minutes and start there. So can you describe a few of the challenges that you faced being in that male-dominated environment? Because I had the same. I was in IT. There were definitely more women, when I was moving up in there. But in the beginning, I know that when I worked with a lot of them, there was very few at the senior levels for sure. So I'd love to hear what you experienced.
Yeah. One of the things that I like to use is humor to diffuse the situation. And when I first was made a director and I was building out my first post-production facility, and this was in the mid-90s, and we were moving from what is called analog to digital. And you could actually start treating video like a document. You could cut and paste. You had random access. And a lot of broadcast engineers were like, that is not 525 scan lines. That's not broadcast spec. Well, we were really changing the world. So I would go in with my 2 producers who worked for me, and all of the questions who happened to be men, and the questions would get directed towards them. And they would always say, well, Lisa's the director of our group. She's the project manager on this. You really need to ask her. And the heads would kind of snap. And so I'd laugh and I go, I know. And I'd sort of look at myself and I'd go, I know. But yeah, I'm in charge here. So let's make this project happen. And I just kept using humor every time I ran into that wall. Now, as part of what I do using humor is I've got a training that I've presented, to a number of post-production facilities that I reference as how to manage male pattern misbehavior. And one of the things that we manage is that expectation that if you're the woman sitting at the table, you're there to take notes or get coffee or somehow be supportive. And so if you are in that role where you are leading a team, you want to maintain eye contact, you want to maintain that erect posture, and you might even have to do a verbal, look at me, and I'm going to share something with you that's really important. So I use that rule KISS, Kiss, keep it simple and straight to the point. And so whenever you're communicating, and especially with senior management, you want to do 3 things. Here's the problem. Here's how I fixed it. Any comments? Moving on. So if you keep your communication really to the point, because people really have short attention spans, and particularly as someone new in the environment, before they understand, oh, you're heading the project. You're a woman and you're heading this engineering project. You want to keep it simple. The other thing to do is I refer to this as man-interrupting. That is not my term. That was a term that Dr. Lois Frankel, who wrote that great series of books on nice girls. And her main message is, you have to be nice. You've got to be easy to work with. But you also have to be able to show you are the one in control and you know what you're doing. So if you're competent, you will be seen as credible and you build trust and earn respect. So that was another thing I had to do a lot, was repeat myself. And at some point, people understand and know you do know what you're doing. You do know what you're asking for. And because you're easy to work with, you are going to make it happen. And so those are some of the things that I think any woman in any role is, you can embrace these techniques and you can advance in your career.
Yeah, I experienced the same. I think it's so...
Yeah, I know you use, because I've read your book and I know you use these same, you just call them different
exactly.
things, right?
Yeah, they didn't have some of these terms back then when I was going through the experiences myself. You know, one of the things that a lot of people ask me about or talk about, and I was wondering what you share with people when you're coaching them, is having someone speak over you in a meeting. Like you have shared something, right? And then the other person, all of a sudden, who may happen to be a male, who happens to say something. And it's like the world has just, solved world hunger based on what they've shared. And you said the exact same thing slightly differently, but it's the same thing. So I know that we talked about this on your podcast, but I'd love to hear from your perspective what you advise people to do or what you coach them to do.
I just want to start by saying two terms: man-interrupting, you've been interrupted, and idea theft. And so one of the things that I think is really critical if you want to advance in your career is to build your circle of support. And that is so much more than just simply networking. So you're in a meeting, you're presenting an idea, and it doesn't seem to land. And 4 seats down the table, somebody, a guy, says exactly the same thing. And just like you said, everybody's like, oh my gosh, that is brilliant. Bob, that is the most brilliant idea. Well, if you have any circle of support in that meeting, or if you don't, the phrase is this: Bob, thanks so much for repeating my idea. There's a couple of items I want to add to that, which I wasn't able to add when I spoke about it the first time. Now, if you want to mess with Bob, and you want to be careful, but you could ask Bob a question. You could say, Bob, I mentioned that, but no one seemed to hear it. I have a question for you. And then ask a detailed question Bob can't answer. Be careful doing that, because when you take someone down in front of an audience, they will never forget or forgive. So if Bob is not respected by senior management, go ahead, have fun. If Bob is, then you want to simply say, there's a couple of other ideas I want to add to that. Add a couple more layers of understanding, and then turn back to Bob and go, I'm really glad you mentioned that again, because I don't think people really heard it the first time. What are your thoughts about these new points? So now you're collaborative. And people go, oh, she didn't get her back up. She didn't get upset. She's collaborating with Bob. Now, you might want to choke Bob, but you can have impulses and not act on them, right?
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I love your humor. I think that is exactly what people need to know, right? How to deal with it. It's such a challenge. It happens, definitely happened to me for sure. So you really focus on women and helping them really increase not only their leadership, but also around equal pay, helping to talk a lot about that. What are some things that you coach people on to help them get to a place of equal pay?
Well, I always start with the data, because a lot of people will say things, oh, the pay gap doesn't exist, or, women leave to have kids and that's their choice. Correct, it is. But women also choose to be paid fairly. So Indeed, which is an employment platform for job seekers, just did a study, and they went worldwide, and it is called Indeed Women's Empowerment. And what they found is that almost 50% of all women worldwide believe they're underpaid. In fact, they know they're underpaid. And almost 60% of women working worldwide do not feel comfortable asking. So I always start with the idea that every time you ask as a woman for fair compensation, understand you make it easier for every woman and everybody who is diverse coming after you into the workspace. So that is the one reason to motivate yourself to ask. And then I also coach around, how do you gather the data to show what you should be paid? How do you gather the quantifiable, compelling business reasons about how you added to the bottom line, how you contributed to the company reaching their annual goals? And then you create what I call your deal memo. And you never put any of your requests in your deal memo. You just put the hard data. This is what the market says is fair compensation. This is what you've contributed. Here's the URLs where you found the information. And here's the hard data about how you returned money to the bottom line by either generating it, you're in sales, saving money because you're in operations and you created greater efficiencies and workflows you designed, or saving time. And time is money. And then I also talk about how to ask, when to ask, and we just covered what to ask for. And the one really salient point that I think is really important is the minute you get that new job, and we've already, I'll talk about how you negotiate the new offer at the end, but the minute you get that new job, you go in and you talk to your manager and you say, I am so excited about working in this company. These values, you put in you check all the boxes about the values align with mine. I know I can really contribute here. I know I can grow my career here. And I want to be honest. I am interested in developing as a professional, and I want to know what the next steps are that you see that I need to meet, the experience I need to gain to get that next role, to make that next title. So you start that conversation from day one. So when you go in 3 months before your annual review, you say, hey, how am I tracking? I'm really looking for that new title, that next title. How am I tracking? So you don't wait until your review to say, so I've been here a year. I think I deserve a raise. Oh, please don't do that. And I think most people don't do that, but that it's part of the normal conversation. And then when you ultimately get that job offer, the minute you get the call from the recruiter, you're looking at the company. You've probably already done your research. You've been selective where you sent your resumes, so that you're always saying, I've done XYZ. I know that this company needs me to do XYZ. I can hit the ground running when I walk in. I'm looking for top of the range. And you already know how to do your research. So it's a continuous conversation. It's not a one and done.
Okay, there's so many things you just shared there that are just brilliant.
But you're doing it too, Susan. You are doing it too, my friend.
I know. I just love, it's almost like you're building a business case, right? To show to your boss to say, here's, what I'm contributing, here's where the market is, and I'm not in the right range. And I love when you talked about negotiating as well. I'm looking for the top of the range, because I think people really get a little bit stressed out. Like, what should I share? How much should I share? And it's so interesting. I had somebody who didn't talk to me before they negotiated, and they went in and said, here's the amount I want. And they basically gave the exact salary that they had before. And I said, oh no, like, you were already underpaid, and now you just gave them the answer as to what they can offer you. And they came back and offered her exactly that. And then we found out that they didn't actually include other things in her benefits that she thought she was going to get. I said, this is actually great. We're going to use that as negotiating leverage to go back and get more money.
Yes.
But that wouldn't have happened, if we had not had that conversation. So I love what you're sharing, and helping people be able to have that conversation on their own is so important, because in that moment, they will just say what they already are making, or maybe even if they're going for the next level. I don't know if you're seeing this too, but sometimes when they're going for the next level, they're so hesitant to say, I've got all the experience, right? I'm ready for this next level, and here's what I should be getting. And so I did exactly what you talked about with someone. And I said, you just need to say it over and over and over and over.
Yes.
Because it needs to just come out of your mouth as if it's totally confident.
Yes.
And they actually talked to her and like tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Oh, by the way, we're just curious, what salary you're going to be looking for." And she turned around and gave them the number, and they didn't even blink. She was going to ask for $25,000 less before we talked. And I said, "I'm so glad we talked because I would have hated for you to miss out on that. It's going to take you so long to get back to that number." So anyway, those are just a couple examples of where this is so important.
Yeah. A point I really want to emphasize is that, as women, we are brought up to put the needs of other people first. Let's just acknowledge it. And in the corporate arena, because it is an arena, it's like a video game and the playing field is not even, right? So you've got to go in prepared. And a lot of times when women are uncomfortable asking, one of the things that I do is I actually do customizable scripts. And I will work with clients and say, all right, say the script back to me. How does that feel? Let's modify that. What feels comfortable? And then I say, okay, you're learning this like a song and you're repeating it. And it's 3 points and you're repeating it. And the other thing I share, and I know you and I talked about this in my podcast, Grace Grit Getting It Done, where it's the power of silence. You say your 3 points and then you lean back with a little smile on your face and you stop talking because people are so uncomfortable with silence and they rush in to fill it. So you can get all sorts of interesting information about, was the job you're interviewing for, did that person leave? And no one is doing that work. And so they need to hire quickly. Oh, file that. You're going to use that. Or, the last person happened to be a man. Oh, you're going beyond top of the range now. Or it was a woman. Oh my God, they're looking for middle of the range. No, you're going top of the range and beyond. So the power of silence and the power of preparation and practice, right? So yeah, we are so on the same page with this.
Yes. I would love, do you have a list of resources that you recommend to people? Are those on your website or anything? Or do you just work with clients on those?
So I will tell you with clients, my individual clients, I do some group trainings. I customize for everybody. But one of the things you can find on my website, which is BIGSKY.coach, www.bigsky.coach, on the very top page above the fold. One of the questions is, are you ready to create the career of your dreams with the title and salary you deserve? And if you hit yes, it takes you to an 8-page PDF, which is covering 5 areas of how to advance in your career. And it really is managing your career development because really no one's going to do that for you. You cannot depend on your manager to help you manage your career. You have to know where you want to go, why, and what resources you need. Managing your manager, because that's the fastest way to get promoted, but it really doesn't work if you don't respect your it can work if you don't respect your manager, but if your manager is not looking out for you, you can't rely on that. So you've also got to manage senior management. And you've got to build your network and your circle of support, which is a little bit different. And then you've got to ultimately manage your mindset. Because if you feel you don't deserve something you're asking for, you're not going to be effective. And again, I want to stress, every time you go and ask for what you fairly deserve, what you have earned, you are making it that much easier for every woman coming after you. And I think that is a really important distinction. Don't feel greedy when you're asking for fair market value. Don't feel greedy when you're asking. Craft your script, 3 points, know what you're asking for, do your research, create your deal memo. But remember, it's not just benefiting you. By asking, you benefit the greater good. And I think this is something that I find for most women, it's really that sticking point of, we call it the likability liability. What if I ask for something and people think I'm greedy? Well, it all depends on how you ask. If you go in and say, I've been here a year, I deserve a raise, that's not going to really land. If you go in and say, I supported the business reaching their annual goals, I did X, Y, Z that was above my pay grade, can we talk about a salary review? Or can we talk about a new title and a promotion and a raise? Or can we talk about a merit increase? Be very strategic in what you're asking for, and you will get yes. And know you deserve it.
Yeah. I love that you talk about the mindset piece and definitely go get this document. I downloaded it myself. It's brilliant. It's got so much in there that everybody can start to take advantage of immediately. So please go to her website and go download it. You will definitely be able to leverage it immediately. But the thing that I thought was great that you put in there was mindset. And the reason I think that is so important is, in my own experience, going to the next level is something that I was excited about, but wasn't sure I was ready for.
Mm.
And I think mindset around being ready for that next level. And, some people will take a job even if they don't have any of the credentials to be able to get it, right? And they're like, I'll figure it out. But women tend to not want to do that, right? They want to have all the boxes ticked and say, I have all of the things that I need to be able to do it. And that definitely happened for me. And I think what happens in that moment is, if you don't have a strong mindset and the ability to see that you do deserve this role or salary or whatever it is, you will start to self-sabotage.
Yeah.
And pull yourself back to a place of comfort because you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious your perspective on that.
Oh my gosh, you just checked so many boxes about some of the deeper work. I believe you do this work. I definitely do this work. Really what we're talking about is the distinction between self-awareness and self-consciousness, right? And when you're self-conscious, what if I fail? What if I step into this role and I just fall down? Well, if you intended to do the right thing, if you had the highest intentions and you understand you did not intend to make a mistake, but if you do, you're going to go fix it. And darn well you are never going to make that mistake again, right? So your intention is to make it better, then do it. Carol Dweck, who is one of my heroes, I wish I could meet her. I haven't figured this out. She wrote a book in 2006 called Positive Psychology, but she was really the author and the originator of growth mindset. And she did all of this research. And what she discovered with people have this mindset of, okay, what's the worst that could happen? I make a mistake. I'm going to go fix it. Versus, oh my God, the worst that can happen, I make a mistake and nobody likes me. Oh, there's that liability that's kind of been ingrained in a lot of women. This is just societal expectations and cultural norms. And you know what? In the corporate arena and in the workspace, just put that up on the shelf. That does not serve you. You can do whatever you want in your social life and your personal life with that. But in corporate, that does not serve you. So if you practice this growth mindset of, that really didn't turn out the way I expected it, what would I do different next time? And you embrace that. I'll just tell you a story about myself. The first post-production bay I built, I did not have an engineer. I had a sales guy working with me. And when we brought in all the equipment and wired it, there was spaghetti behind it. There were all these like black cables all over the edit bay that kind of filled up the edit bay. And I was like, okay, I need an engineer who's going to come in and wire this and make it beautiful. The second post-production facility I built out, I had an engineer. That was the first guy I hired. So you know what? It is not the end of the world because you're going to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. So embrace that mindset and know what you're not good at. That's the self-awareness. Don't beat yourself up for it. One thing that some of the best leaders do is they know what they're not good at, and they hire people who are good at those things, and they let them run with it. They let them do those things they're good at. And so embrace the growth mindset. And the last thing I want to add, which is a little bit of off topic, is that some people don't see themselves as leaders. And this is from Viktor Frankl, who wrote, I can't remember the name of the book, but he was a psychologist, and he had been in a concentration camp during World War II, which is one of the most horrific things that has ever happened in humanity. And he was able to say, I can have a positive mindset and navigate through this. And so what he said was, the true leader is determined by two things. If you can motivate someone to do something they don't know how to do and inspire someone to do something they don't believe they can do, that is the true definition of leadership. So for anyone listening who wants to step into a role of higher leadership, you have the most critical two components. If you can motivate yourself to do things you don't know how to do because you go out and you study and you learn and you ask for help and you look at the experts and you try and figure it out and you make that attempt. And if you can inspire yourself to say, I've never done this. I'm afraid to do this. I don't know if I can do this, but you go and do it anyway, then you are a leader. Because if you can motivate and inspire yourself, then you can motivate and inspire others. And that is the true mark of a leader.
Love all of that. Yes. So important. And I think there's so much hesitation, fear of failure, fear of making a mistake. Right now, it's kind of interesting, in the more recent generations to join the workforce. I think there's such a fear of making a mistake or failing and that they will automatically be fired.
Yeah.
And I think that is really interesting, quick to judgment, for themselves, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know where that's coming from, if it's just because they feel just a lack of security in themselves yet or confidence. But, I'm coaching someone and I'll say, no, but I don't think that's going to be enough to fire you.
Right.
I'm pretty sure you're okay. But they just haven't learned all of the, norms of corporate yet and how things work. And it's probably their first job, right? So I think it's important to listen to what Lisa just shared, because there are so many things you can do that if you just trust yourself, I think trusting yourself is one of the big keys to be able to move yourself forward when you feel stuck or when you feel like you don't know enough. And to me, once I adopted, if I make a mistake, I'm going to learn from it. The whole learning aspect, I think, is what keeps you moving forward.
Absolutely.
So just look at it as something to learn from.
Absolutely. I had this client during the pandemic, and she was the head of PR for a very large hospital. So you can imagine the fires she was putting out daily, right? And she worked with me she started with me like January 2020, and then the pandemic hit and there was lockdown. And in talking, one of the things that she helped me create, she talked about CPR, which is cardiopulmonary resuscitation, heart-lung resuscitation. So, if you are drowning, you want to give someone CPR. If you're having a heart attack, you need CPR. But as we were working together, we rephrased it to compassion, patience, resilience, and regeneration. So if you start by remembering, we all have this inner critic. This is part of our natural anatomy. This is the limbic brain at the very base of the brain, the top of the spinal column, and people have heard of amygdala hijacks, right? Where you immediately, all the oxygen and the blood just leaves your prefrontal cortex. You stop thinking and you immediately get into fight, flight, freeze. There's two other modes, fawn and play dead, but most of us are familiar with fight, freeze. And so what you want to do is you want to remember, when you start thinking, don't start blaming yourself. Treat yourself like your own best friend. Show compassion. We say things to ourselves we would never say to people we care about, let alone people we really don't like. We say those things to ourselves and we start to believe them. So show yourself compassion by treating yourself as your own best friend, and then show yourself patience. If your intention is to do the right thing, your intention was not to make a mistake. Your intention was to do the right thing. Be patient with yourself. And when you have compassion and patience, then you can be resilient. You can go out and try again. So practice CPR, compassion, patience, and resilience with yourself. I think that's critical. Quiet the inner critic. And you're absolutely right, Susan. You are not going to lose your job when you make a mistake. You might lose your job if you put the company at risk. How do you do that? You put the company at risk by saying something divisive, saying something that is not professional, where someone else can hear you and report you to HR. So, no comments about people's gender, what they wear, how they look, their age, or their skin color. Be smart. That is really the one thing that is going to make you lose your job. If you make a mistake, tell your boss I need support. I need more information. This will never happen again, because I bet it will not. And anybody thinks about this, you make the mistake once, you never make that mistake again. You might make others, but not that one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's definitely that moment of, oh my gosh, how do I never do this again? No matter what I do, right? How do I avoid this forever? I have a quote that I saw on your emails, and I just wanted to share it because I think it's so impactful. The woman who does not require validation from anyone is the most feared individual on the planet, by Mohadessa Najumi. Yeah. And I think that is so powerful because there is this external validation that I think sometimes we require or we feel like we need, right? From our parents, from our workplace, from our teachers, and letting go of that and being able to just trust yourself and know that you know the right things to do is so empowering. It's just like freedom. Yeah. So I'm curious why you chose that quote, if that's similar to what I just described, or there's other things you would add.
Oh, it is. I will share that I started my career in television as a room producer. And literally what I did was I took 30-second on-air spots for a small cable network, and I collected them onto a reel. This is like, we're talking dark ages. This is before nonlinear. And it went up on the satellite feed. And so it's basically just like taking documents and putting them into a book. But instead, I was taking bits of video that were promos for movies that were playing on this network I work for, and putting them onto a reel and then putting it on the satellite feed so all the affiliates who carried this network could promote the product on the network. And I was like so in over my head. My background was performing arts, and I had taught dance, and I was living in New York. This was in the 80s. Boy, am I dating myself. But I remember going in and going, oh my God, I'm in a dark room with all this equipment and I have no idea what I'm doing. So I started talking with my editor. I sat behind the editor. Ultimately, I ended up sitting in the editor's chair. And so I always found the people who I would say to them, can you help me? I've got some basic questions for you, and I see you as an expert. And so I started learning. So I went in at a very, very junior level, and I learned the business from the ground up. And I realized that knowledge is power. And so many people who were in managerial roles did not have the legacy of information I had. And so for anybody listening, is if you know your job and you know it inside and out, and you can see potential problems coming down the track before they become a crisis, and you can avert it, you are super, super valuable. So anytime you make a mistake, that's just an opportunity to learn how you're going to do it different next time. And so once you really are competent in what you do, keep learning. Learn the next step. Start looking at where the business is going. Start looking at the bigger picture. What are the challenges? So that you're not waiting for someone to tell you what the reality is. You have some understanding in it. And then this way, when you get into an elevator, or you're having a short conversation, or you're interacting with someone in senior management, you can ask them a question and just start that informal conversation about, oh, I just was reading in the trades about how this particular business is merging. What are your thoughts about that? Oh, they're going to share that with you. So don't be afraid, but know your job and know what you're good at. And don't wait for somebody who doesn't know your job to tell you you're good at your job. If someone says thank you, definitely acknowledge it. Don't do the, oh, that was nothing routine. Don't shoot yourself in the foot that way. You diminish the person thanking you, and you diminish your own contribution. But when you know what you're good at, and you got to own it, you got to own it. You're not going to be friends with everybody. And some people are going to be threatened by you, particularly if you're diverse, particularly if you're female, if you're, outside the normal age range, if you're not Caucasian, you're outside the norm. You're going to threaten other people. They're going to go, they don't look like me. They must be, in my case, are you taking notes in this meeting? I'm taking some notes on you, definitely. So I think it's really important for people to own their worth, to know the skills they bring to the table. It is empowering. And I also think that when you have a solution, don't be afraid to speak up. If you don't speak up, you're not going to problem solve. You're not going to make things better. And I think for many women, when you say that, they go, oh, I have a solution. I mean, let's face it, most women can come in with a paper clip and some Scotch tape and make everything better. Or, whatever the tool of choice is.
A little MacGyver.
Maybe it's a Post-it note, whatever. We can figure it out. So, yeah, that was too long an explanation, I have to say.
Not at all. And there was so much in there. So I was just going to say to everybody listening, go back and start at the beginning of what we just went through and listen to it over and over and over again, because that is the secret, right? That is how you move past some of these challenges and be able to recognize your own worth and trust yourself, and that you do have good ideas and that you should speak up because they need to hear it in order for them to even make great decisions, right? They will make bad decisions if you don't share what you know. So, oh my gosh, that was 100% brilliance right there for sure. All right, I'm going to transition us into the 4 questions that I ask everybody. So the first one is, what is visibility and why did you answer that way?
I would say visibility is the ability to pick your spots, stand up, show up, speak up, understand your audience, because when you offer a solution in a crisis that is sustainable, that solution is sustainable, oh, you will be recognized and you will be rewarded. Yeah.
Yeah. What are you doing to be visible?
Oh, what am I doing to be visible? I am posting every day on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. By the way, I want to shout out, I lost my Facebook business page, 77,000 followers. It got hacked. So I would just say, go to BIGSKYCoach.Lisa Gillette and join my Facebook page, please. But I post. I do little strategy nuggets because let's face it, we don't have a lot of time. I have my own podcast where I have awesome guests like you who share about how to step into leadership, because let's just face it, the world right now is in desperate need of leaders, and we need leaders who make decisions based on what will benefit the greater good, not the chosen few. So step into a role of higher leadership so you can create the change and make the difference. But that's how I'm showing up. I'm talking, doing podcasts, and very active on social media. And at some point, I'm hoping to publish a book. I've got I'll just say, crappy first draft.
That's how they all start, right? That's how they all start. They get less and less crappy. Editing is the best gift. Editing is the best gift in the world, I will tell you. After I went through the process, I was, wow, it's just amazing. Okay, what is the best leadership or career advice you've received?
I want to say the best boss I ever had was a woman who was brilliant. Her name is Rebecca O'Sullivan. She is a leader, awesome. And she said to me, Lisa, you don't need to explain every decision. And I realized I'd been programmed by the role I'd been in before, where I was working with a bunch of broadcast engineers, and they were involved in helping me build a post-production bay. And so when she said that, I was like, oh. Now, obviously, if senior management asks you, yes. But when you're going in and communicating a decision, you don't need to explain the why unless senior management tells you. When you're communicating to your team, here's the decision I made, here is your role in it, these are my expectations for what you need to execute. Yeah, answer any question, absolutely. But when you're sharing a decision, just here's the decision going forward. And if senior management asks, you use KISS, which is, here's what I decided, here was the problem, here's how I fixed it. You good with that? Moving on.
Yeah. It's almost like you're rationalizing your decision, and it diminishes your credibility immediately when you start to do that. So that is
like
excellent
asking
advice.
for approval. Don't do that. Don't
Correct.
ask
Yeah,
for
you don't have to
permission.
do that.
Don't ask for approval.
Please stop saying I'm sorry.
Oh, gosh, yes.
That was what I did for a long time. Yeah.
Yeah, come up with something else.
Yes. Okay, last question. What is a book you would recommend to the audience?
Oh, gosh, there's so many, but there's two I really want to recommend. One is by Kristen Neff. She is a cognitive behavioral therapist, and she writes on self-compassion. And I think it's really important. This is not a book I would recommend to most men because most men don't have this issue. But as women, we are socialized, and especially in school, we're told, keep your eyes on your desk, keep your head down, do your work, you will be recognized. In a corporate setting, that is going to shoot you in the foot. So practice self-compassion so that you don't need to ask for permission or approval to share your good ideas. She's got a great book that is called The Power of Self-Compassion. Her last name is Neff. And then just in terms of advancing in your career, Dr. Lois Frankel, she wrote the Nice Girl series, and her most recent book, which is actually an audiobook, and talk about customizable scripts for any situation. Dr. Lois Frankel, and shout out, she's a mentor of mine. I stalked her, and honestly, I went to her book readings, and I was like, hi, I want to meet you. So I would just tell anybody listening, if there is somebody you want to meet, show up, support them, post on their social media, say, I really appreciate what you do. She wrote a series of books, but the last book that was published is Nice Girls Don't Stand Up and Speak Out. And it really is about, in a corporate setting, you need to use your in-office voice, not your at-home voice. Mm-hmm. And it is a different way of speaking and a different way of communicating. And you will be heard and you will be understood. And I'm not telling anybody to speak in a masculine voice, because as a woman, that is not going to work for you either. But you need to speak clearly and communicate convincingly in a voice that is authentic to you. And I would say Dr. Lois Frankel, bar none, in her last book that was published, Nice Girls Don't Speak Up or Stand Out. And she's not saying don't be nice. Nice is a requirement. But she is saying you need to be able to stand in your power, your confidence, your credibility, and speak up. So those are the two big books.
100%. Love those. Both great recommendations. I actually just got Kristen Neff's workbook for the Self-Compassion Workbook, which seems great so far. So love all of this. Where would you like people to reach out to you? And
they can go directly to my website. It is www.BIGSKY.coach, COACH, or you can follow me on Instagram. I am BIGSKY Coach _ Lisa Gillette. If you type in BIGSKY Coach, you'll find me. And if you send me an email, Lisa@BIGSKY Coach, you'll see everywhere I am on social media. But start with the website because there's a free gift there. There's also some paid trainings if you're wondering how to negotiate. I've got a very intensive 29-page workbook. And I'm about to launch an online training course where I actually take you through each page of the workbook. That is a step-by-step.
I will highly recommend her Instagram for sure. I haven't been to your TikTok yet, but her Instagram is so powerful. You can just literally see her teaching you step-by-step what to do, what to pay attention to. And they're very small, brief little nuggets of information that you can take, and they're very practical and you can just apply them right away. So thank you for what you're doing. I am so, so happy that we got to meet. I am excited to continue our conversations outside of our podcast. And I know that you are just bringing such a wealth of help to leaders to help them with pay equity, negotiations, conversations, to help them advance so many great things. So thank you for all that you're doing, Lisa.
Oh, thank you for all you're doing, Susan. You are doing something that is so powerful and so necessary, because if you're not visible, you won't stand out in the crowd and you won't be able to create the changes that we need so much in the world. So back at you, Susan.
Well, thanks so much for joining today on the Visibility Factor podcast, and we'll catch you on the next one. Thanks so much for listening to the Visibility Factor podcast. Remember that visibility starts with small steps that are intentional and consistent each day. Be bold, be visible, be the leader you were meant to be. Find us and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever else you listen to podcasts. Follow us on all of our social media platforms, which are highlighted in the show notes. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Visibility Factor Podcast.